Hey everybody, welcome back to Living Electric. We got kind of an interesting discussion today, prompted by some things we saw in our local Facebook group of Tesla owners and just some recent articles we've seen. But we're going to be diving into battery replacements, battery degradation, just a lot of things EV battery, and I think some concerns a lot of new owners have about them. Now that we have kind of a backlog of data, we can talk about what's true, what's not true, what experiences might be like as your EVs get a little bit older, and then touch on our own experiences with it as well. Just general battery degradation, since I've got over 60,000 miles on my car now, which
crazy.
Is crazy to think about. I don't know how many you have on your three, but I'm sure it's starting to rack them up now.
Yeah, especially with Tyler driving back and forth. I think we're almost at 18,000, so we're getting closer to 20,000 miles. But our Mini Cooper has 4,000 miles.
Oh wow!
So not quite as much.
Yeah.
But yeah, when we had our Bolt, I was at 32,000 miles, and my Volt, I think I was like at 55 when we got rid of that car. So you've kept your cars longer than I were.
I would say, what's the highest mileage car you've had?
The Volt. I added about 40,000 miles to that car.
That you own, I'm sure. That wasn't like your parents' car you were driving or something.
Yeah, no. I've always been very fortunate to have low mileage. Actually, no. Now that I'm thinking about this, no. My very first car was a 1990 Buick Reatta that had like 180,000 miles on it.
Okay.
And are you familiar with that vehicle?
I'm not. I'll have to look it up. You said a Buick what?
Reatta. It's REATTA. It's it was actually a pretty cool Buick.
Ooh.
It was I think
kind of a like classic 80s Buick, right?
Yes. Yeah,
Very
cool.
Cool.
It was one of the first vehicles to have an LCD screen like display.
Just state of the art.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. And like one of the headlights would wouldn't go up all the way, so it was a cute moment. But that was the oldest vehicle I had. But obviously that was gas, and we're talking about electric.
Right.
But I'm excited to dive further into this because Tyler and I did a video utilizing one of our sponsors for Everyday EV is Recurrent Auto, and they helped us by providing their battery report data to talk about degradation, or when a battery goes bad for the Model 3, the Hyundai Ioniq 5, and the Nissan Leaf. We dove a little further into that.
Right.
But Recurrent came out with an article back in March, really diving further into all of that data. And they did a fantastic job with it. I love what they do.
Yeah, it's a really in-depth article. We'll definitely link it in the show notes, so definitely check it out after you're done listening here. But yeah, shout out to them for doing this research. They're one of the few in the industry, I think, that has a lot of the data to back things up. We see a lot of things from individual manufacturers, like Tesla will release their battery report or whatever, but Recurrent gets info from Tesla, from BMW, from Kia, Hyundai. Like, they have a full backlog of cars that they can kind of tap into and get battery information off of. So I know your car is in there. They provide some cool just individual battery reports. I use it on my car. Definitely something I recommend if you want to kind of be part of this data collection and also get some information about your own battery. And I thought maybe we could talk about just the degradation piece first, because I think that's something everybody is going to have experience with. And then maybe talk about like worst case scenario, battery replacements, battery refurbishing, end of life, that sort of thing. So
yeah.
I don't know if you have your report pulled up. I was going to pull mine up just so we have something to speak to on the Recurrent site.
Yeah, let me log into that.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm just looking at or do you want to talk about yours first?
Do you want to give like a quick summary of what the report is? I can do that really fast.
Yeah, why don't you do that? I think you're a little bit more familiar.
So Recurrent Auto is a really cool data-driven company that provides insight to battery degradation and essentially battery health via your vehicle, as Alex mentioned earlier. They have a fleet of thousands of vehicles, different manufacturers, and what's really cool is you can sign up for monthly reports for free. And this is not a sponsor of Living Electric. Yeah. I just want to clarify. but we just really love that everything is data proven with them. And what's really cool is that they'll send you those monthly reports, and they'll dive into things like your expected range based on other vehicles within the fleet of your specific model. It will give you an idea of your charging practices throughout the month. And it kind of gives you a range of where you want to fall to keep your battery healthy long term. And if there's any loss of battery, state of charge, and so forth, they'll provide that information. So it's a really good health diagnostic tool for your battery every single month.
Yeah, it shows a lot of good info, and I forgot we can actually share screens on here now. So I was going to share mine. And
we've got technology.
We have technology. So I was just going to pull mine up, and maybe we can kind of talk through just some of my data. Obviously, this is audio for some people, so if you're not seeing my screen, that's fine. But we can at least talk through some of this. So this is my Recurrent Auto report. So it does require you to log in and see things, log into your Tesla account so that they can pull the battery information. But you can see I have what my expected range is versus EPA range. So you can see my original EPA range was 322 miles. And I think actually when I got mine, it was like 310. So I don't think I quite had the upgraded or the software updated battery or whatever it is. But mine has always hovered in around the 300 mile range since I've gotten my car. Right now it's in the 280 range. So it's certainly lost a decent amount of range. But I think what you'll see if I scroll down a little bit, they have this range compared to others, and you can kind of see where my car falls on the list of or on just the general range in vehicles. So you see with a lot of vehicles, you have this big drop off at first where you lose like a decent chunk. Decent meaning like a few percent, and then it really starts to level off as time goes on. So that seems to be a trend across a lot of EV batteries where the main loss in battery capacity is in the first year or so. It's not like 5 years down the road and you have another big drop where you're losing like 40 miles or something ridiculous. Like it kind of levels off and is really slow after that.
Yes, and that's exactly what Recurrent Data is showing, and a lot of other research is showing that as well. You'll see some degradation within like the first few, 1,000 plus miles, but then eventually it will plateau for the rest of, hopefully the rest of your ownership. But that obviously depends on if you're fast charging a lot, because that will impact your battery health, or if you're charging more than 80% and going below 5%. It just all depends on how you're taking care of your vehicle, essentially.
Right. Yeah, so I didn't do a great job of taking care of my vehicle. I think we've discussed before. I didn't have the best charging setup, so I was doing everything you weren't supposed to do. I was charging to 100% a lot. I was fast charging a lot. I was putting a lot of just really high-powered charge cycles on my battery, which in general people say isn't the best thing to do. Since I've gotten home charging, you can see my average charge is now around 65%. They recommend between 30 and 80. So you can kind of see graphically where my car is charging day to day, which is pretty cool. So I try to keep it in that 30 to 80 range. We only daily charge to 80% now instead of 90 like I used to do. So that's starting to help a little bit. And then the big thing too I like is I just found this where you can see how your range changes throughout the year. Because I think everybody's first winter with an EV, they start seeing like, oh, my range is so much lower. And it's like, well, the car is calculating things differently. It's a little bit less efficient in the winter. So you can really see this graphically, what that change is looking like in those colder months in a climate like Columbus. So I know I experience that like every winter. It's like, why is my range so much lower? And then like 3 months later, it's August, and it's not August, I guess, but it's what are we in now? May, and it's starting to get a lot better. So
for sure, yeah, I know that hit me harder with the Mini with how short of a range that is. Yeah, going from 114 miles on a really warm day to like 55 to 60 miles on a cold day. But I mean, the amazing thing with like batteries is that like it kind of similar to, your state of charge over time, it plateaus depending on how cold or hot it is outside. You really won't see like, 90% of your battery zapped. So depending on the temperature. But the one thing I love about Recurrent is just like how easy it is to understand their data. Like they really make it easy for people to just understand that this is what it means.
Right. Yeah, because a lot of this can get really overwhelming, and I like kind of points to another graph they have here. They have this visual map to say like, okay, you have this much range. How far does that actually take you? And you can see I can basically get anywhere in Ohio without stopping on my full battery range, which is pretty cool. So it just pulls in your zip code, and you can see I'm covering basically the whole state. I don't know why this top left corner of the northwest corner of Ohio is empty, but
Yeah.
I don't know if there's not. I don't think there's a lot of highways up that direction, so that may be why.
Yeah, yeah, and thus maybe they're factoring where charging stations might be too, just behind the scenes.
Oh, maybe, yeah, to stop at one if you were to get really low. So
I'm not sure though.
Yeah, but a lot of cool data here. The other thing I'll call out is they do bring in the battery warranty, which I think is just a good thing to keep in mind. So they have this in the Tesla app now as well. So if you do have a Tesla, they include this in the app, which is really nice. But I think the thing we tell a lot of new EV owners or people that are looking at an EV are you do have this battery warranty as kind of a fail-safe for a lot of battery issues and for a pretty long amount of time too. So you can see I'm at a little bit over 60,000 miles. I've got a 120,000 mile warranty and an 8-year warranty. So 8 years, 120,000 miles on my battery. So if anything were to go, if it were to fail, like go completely dead for whatever reason, or Tesla guarantees 70% of its original capacity. So that is kind of the caveat here is 70% of original capacity is a pretty significant range drop. So that's going from 300 down to like 210 or something, I want to say. Is about a 30% drop. So that's really like pretty significant. And if you have degradation like that, there's probably a bigger issue with your battery than just it losing general amount of range. So
yes. Yeah. And I mean, like these reports definitely give you good insight to see what's wrong with your battery, if there is anything wrong with your battery. But we always recommend if you do suspect that something's wrong with your vehicle, work with Tesla, for example, take it to the showroom, get some diagnostics done and just double check. But most vehicles are smart enough nowadays to at least notify you if something is happening to your battery pack.
Right.
Yeah, it just won't just, well, hopefully it won't just die on you, or it won't just, anything worse than that.
Right.
But, well, let's, I think, now that we talked about a good overview of what Recurrent's monthly reports are, do you want to dive into that article that they released?
Yeah, let's do it. So, yeah, the article really talked about a few things here, and I think the main just overarching theme, and that's the title of the article, is like, how long do they last? That's really what matters, I think, for owners. It's not like how much degradation will I have in a year, how much will it be in 2 years. It's like, will this battery last long term? And I think the key takeaways just at the top of the article were, in general, batteries are not being replaced very often. They're still very rare. So they have a community of 15,000 cars, they said, and 1.5% have been replaced. And that is outside of large recalls like the Chevy Bolt. So that accounted for a higher percentage, but that was also because Chevy recalled every single Bolt battery. So that's like a huge chunk, especially when they were the top 4 vehicle sold in EVs. So when a vehicle like that gets recalled, that's going to be a significant chunk. So I will say, though, I think 1.5% sounds low, but that's like more than 1 out of 100, which I think if you put it in those terms, it feels a lot higher than I think it should be. So
yeah. And that's one thing, and I'll touch base on this as we get through the article, like with like some of the research that we've done with like our videos. We didn't dive into how many engines are replaced based on how many like gasoline powered vehicles are there. So it's like, I don't have that data to like contrast that. But I mean, I guess 1 out of 100 vehicles doesn't seem like a lot. I don't know. Like obviously, like it's like 99% of the rest of the vehicles are still good. Batteries are still good.
Yeah, it's kind of an percentages are always funny because it's like it sounds like it's really low, but then if you say like 1 out of 100, then it's like, oh well, that's not very that doesn't seem as good. I saw some like Reddit threads. This was maybe like 6 or so months ago, but it was like, what is something that if it only happened like 1% of the time would still be bad or something like that. And somebody's like, if you only got in a car wreck 1% of the time you drove, like it would still be pretty dangerous to like drive your car. If you think about how often you drive, like that would be 3 accidents or more a year if you're driving daily. So like if you kind of put it in those terms, it feels like a lot worse than it should be. So
yeah.
I just think that number gives me a little bit of concern to say like, oh, it's only 1.5%. It still seems high to me. But just for context, I think we are still very new in just EVs in general. A lot of the vehicles getting to the point where they need a battery replacement are first gen vehicles. It's vehicles like the Nissan Leaf. It's like original Model S's. We haven't seen a lot of vehicles with kind of the next gen battery technology, if you will, getting to that mileage mark. And the ones that do, it sounds like, are not being replaced as often. So I don't know if that's something the article came to, but that's at least how I'm I'm seeing things.
Yes. Well, I mean, that's exactly what like our research found too with our videos on the vehicles. And we can touch base on costs, in a little bit, but like essentially what we found is that like batteries that are not liquid cooled or have like a battery management system like the old Nissan Leaf tend to have seen a lot of degradation or batteries going bad versus some of the newer vehicles that do have those battery management systems. I mean, a great contrast, let's go back in time, to 2011, 2012 when the Chevy Volt with the V and, the Nissan Leaf were out. The Volt actually had a battery management system, and we're still seeing vehicles from around that time going on like 300,000 miles. Yeah. And their batteries, I mean, they've had some, loss of charge, but they're still totally fine. Like some people are still driving on the original battery, whereas the Nissan Leaf, a lot of them are being recycled for battery storage purposes, where they lost too much state of charge where they're not functional for driving. Yeah. So, but let's go back and forward to 2023.
So the other point they made is, like I just mentioned, degradation is not linear. So everybody's going to experience some degradation. It's not going to be like, oh, I lost 5 miles this year, I'm going to lose another 5 miles next year, and so on until I have no miles left. It's very much a curve where you have a bigger drop at the beginning, and then it levels out for a pretty long period. So again, just something to keep in mind if you are a new EV owner. I know you probably experienced this with your EVs. I've experienced the same, where it's like first year I lost 10 miles, and then like subsequently it's only been a few miles. So the other thing I'll say too is I just keep my battery on percentage now. I know I'm pretty sure you still use miles, but I'm like,
oh no, I do percentage now.
You do percentage? Okay.
Yes.
I switched to percentage, and my like just worrying about losing range or miles or whatever else has just gone away completely. I'm I just treat it like a phone, and like if I'm getting low on a road trip or going to arrive with less than like 10%, then I'll make an extra stop. So like even on road trips, I just use percentage. It just I think gives you a lot more peace of mind and just kind of hides it, if you will. So
yes, no, I absolutely agree, because I mean, like another thing to think about too this is the guessometer, if you want to consider it that. A lot of the range estimates that you're seeing on vehicles are kind of a guess, because it's a lot of algorithms and calculations going on where the vehicle is trying best to project the mileage for you, and whereas like with the percentage, I feel like that's more of an accurate readout for exactly how much you have left of driving. But it's actually funny you mentioned that in the first year you noticed that you lost about 10 miles. I'm beginning to realize how oblivious I am, because like I don't have a fact for you with like what our cars have lost, just because I don't pay attention to that. I don't know if that's like I feel like maybe when the car becomes like 4 or 5 years, old, I might start considering that. But like at the moment, I'm like, it still has, 350 miles. It's like, I'm fine.
I do wish they had, Tesla could easily do this too. I wish they kind of had a better, like, here's your degradation percentage or something like that. I know iPhones do that. A lot of like smartphones are now doing that, where they're like, here's your battery health or something like that. which I think you can do in the service menu now, but it like requires a full like 24-hour test of your battery, and it can like put some strain on the battery and potentially cause problems too. So that is probably why they don't have that. But yeah, I wish they had something like that to at least point to it and say, hey, your battery's within spec. It's, you know, degrading as normal. There's no concern here. Or, oh yeah, we're seeing a lot more than normal. Keep an eye on it in a year from now. If it's still continuing to lower super fast, then we'll replace it or something like that. So
definitely. Yeah. And it would be nice if manufacturers would implement some type of like notification, like a text message or something, you know, that at least alerts you like, hey, we've noticed some like anomaly in your battery, you know, like something like that. But
right. So
but yeah. One thing I do want to mention with the article, you know, they mentioned that most replacements are covered under warranty, and that's exactly what we saw too with like our research with our videos. But as you mentioned, you know, this is such a new market that most of these vehicles are still relatively new.
Yeah.
So, you know, they do fall within that warranty range.
Right.
But, you know, the downside is that if you do have an older vehicle, and, you know, we can talk about the example from the, you know, the Facebook group, you know, being mileage out of warranty. If you're out of warranty, you're going to have to, you know, you're going to have to pay for it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That is the concern if you are a high mileage driver. So granted, I have a 120,000 mile warranty, but if I were driving a lot more than I was, then that warranty would be gone pretty quick. So I'm actually kind of keeping pace, just looking up my report. I'm keeping pace pretty well with the time warranty and the mileage warranty. So like I have 54% of my like years left, if you will, and 49% of my miles. So I'm actually like a little bit driving a little bit more than than expected, if you will.
Yeah.
So that is a concern if you are going to be driving even significantly more, that you blast through that mileage warranty before your car is even a few years old. So, which does make sense. That's kind of why they have those warranties in place, is they're like mileage and charging and all that stuff is really what does not damage, I guess, but like wears on the battery more than just it sitting around or time passing. So it is good to know that a lot of those are under warranty, though. That majority of people aren't driving ridiculous amounts. They're driving kind of typical amounts, and they're in that warranty if something were to go wrong. So
definitely. Yeah. And you know, I know one of the big questions that we've received, and you know, we see it a lot, is how much does a battery replacement cost?
Yeah.
And you know, the battery is honestly the heart of the vehicle. It's obviously what powers the vehicle, so it's one of the most important factors.
Yep.
But you know, for example, the Facebook group that, you know, we were mentioning, one of the owners of that group recently, I think they said they have well over 120,000 miles. Was it 170?
They're at like 160, 170, I believe. So
okay. So their battery's out of warranty. They have a Model 3. I believe it's a 2020 Model 3. So it's about 3 years old, if I remember. It's a 2019.
Yeah.
But it's a few years old, but, you know, regardless, they're out of warranty, and their vehicle can only charge up to a max of 29%. Which, I got to be honest, this was the most alarming example I've seen so far of battery degradation. I don't think I've seen anything this extreme.
Well, I think it wasn't even degradation. I think that was a battery issue, because it was throwing errors as well, saying like it's unable to charge. Like I think it was throwing more errors than just, hey, it's degraded by 70%.
God, I was about to say that was that was alarming.
Yeah. Regardless, it's still alarming. So
yes, yeah, and regardless, they're out of warranty, and you know, I think the thing that we're going to start realizing as like these vehicles do start becoming, you know, older, it's going to be more transparent to exactly how much the stuff is going to cost drivers.
Yeah.
And for this example, Tesla quoted them about $16,000 for a full battery replacement, because they won't replace certain components of the battery. But there are third-party shops that are starting to pop up that will work on specific battery cells. So I can't speak to that in this example, just because I don't know the full details, whether or not they could do that.
Yeah.
But a full battery replacement for a Model 3 is looking to be about $16,000 based on, you know, that Facebook post. And
right. Yeah. So again, that's not a repair bill you want to get or want to have to
No.
pay for, right? Especially when people are kind of saying, "Oh yeah, like it's a 500,000 mile battery or it's a X amount of mile battery." It's like Tesla can say all these things, but until they put it in writing in your warranty, like they're not really held to anything. So
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
that's another thing just as a consumer to be aware of is understand what that battery warranty is, what it covers. Like I brought up this 30% degradation to people and they always thought it was like, "Oh, if I just have any battery problems, I can get it replaced within 8 years." It's like, "No, there's specific numbers, specific scenarios where it would have to meet to be eligible for a full battery replacement." So,
Yeah.
just keep that in mind. I think just be an informed consumer, understand the warranty, understand exactly what it covers, and just be aware of this. Like, you're buying a somewhat new piece of technology. It's, yes, there's a lot of data backing it up and saying, yeah, it should be fine for hundreds of thousands of miles. We've seen a lot of vehicles last that long with no problem. But you could still be one of those outliers, one of those 1.5% that are having issues, right? So I don't think
Yep.
anybody's immune to that, and just be aware of that. So
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, I mean, regardless of the car, gas or electric, it's honestly just luck if your car does make it to 500,000 miles, you know. And
Yep.
it takes practice too, you know. It takes a lot of good you know, maintenance, taking care of your vehicle and just being, you know, just monitoring all that
Right.
stuff. But
Right.
yeah, yeah. So as long as you take care of your car, you should be good. But a
Right.
lot of it plays with luck.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
to your point, gas or electric, like gas cars have these same problems. You could get past the bumper to bumper warranty or whatever these gas vehicles are saying. Your motor could get completely shot. You could have something break on your car. It's like it's as soon
Yeah.
as it's out of warranty, you're kind of SOL. Like you've got to be financially
Yep.
prepared for that. Have some money saved up if anything were to go wrong with your vehicle. So just
Yeah.
again, be an informed consumer. Be be kind of cognizant of these things going in. Like Tesla and these other EV companies don't really owe you anything after you've passed the warranty and you've bought their car. Like they have their money at that point. So
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. At the end of the day, they're a company. So
Yep.
yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
Yep.
I do want to just touch on before we go to the next point in the report. Some of the research that we did a few months ago regarding battery replacement costs. It all depends on how much technology's in the battery, and what I mean by that is
And
I'll
how
go back to
big,
my point.
right?
Well, yeah, and how big it is. Yeah. So battery management systems tend to play a very big factor, whether or not it's a more affordable repair versus something, you know, that's more expensive. You know, some research we found, like for example, like a Prius battery, it's a smaller battery pack, and it doesn't really have a lot of you know, like systems that maintain, you know, temperature and so forth.
It's
and
like
that was
a normal car battery.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. I think it's a nickel based battery pack.
Okay.
I have to look at the details, but from what we researched is that it was about $2,000 to $3,000 for that replacement. But we're seeing those battery packs, because it's a hybrid vehicle, go well over like 300,000+ miles.
Yeah.
A Nissan Leaf battery pack was about $6,000 to $8,000 because there's no battery management system in that, it's all air cooled. And then anything above that essentially has a battery management system. So, you know, some research on Hyundai battery packs, we saw $15,000 estimated for their replacements because they are, you know, a newer vehicle.
Yeah.
Those tend to have the same kilowatt hour capacities that, you know, Tesla vehicles have. So they're about 70 to 90 kilowatt hours. And then I'm assuming anything above 100 kilowatt hours is going to be significantly more expensive.
Right.
Can't imagine a Hummer EV what their battery packs might cost, but
Yeah.
it's just something to be very mindful of. And
Right.
one thing is that, you know, these cars are newer, and thankful, you know, for companies like Recurrent that provide data insights into this, because it just goes back to my point from time and time again. We need a lot more transparency to make, you know, people comfortable that this is going to work for them.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've found, I mean, time and time again, I think people are more apt to trust you if you're just upfront and truthful about not only the positive, but also the negatives that come with EVs. Like I think we're very transparent on this podcast that there are certainly lot of room for improvement in some areas. There's a lot of great things about EVs, but we still got a long way to go before they've really catch on. And like a lot of people, it's their number one option. So I think reports and articles like this that kind of give you some peace of mind are certainly helpful. So
For sure. Yeah. And actually, I think Mariah, who was on our podcast a while back, she was mentioning a Fusion hybrid that she had. And maybe if she listens to this, I'm probably getting this information wrong. But I'm pretty sure she told me that it had close to 200,000 miles and it had to have a battery replacement. But since it was a smaller battery, it's similar to like a Prius. It wasn't that expensive.
Right.
But once that was replaced, it was essentially like a new vehicle again.
Yep.
So yeah, and obviously that doesn't count for sheet metal or anything else that could go wrong with the vehicle. But keep the heart healthy, I guess.
Right. That is the positive part of battery replacements, I think, is the only equivalent, I guess, I can think of in gas vehicles is like a full motor, transmission, everything replacement. And if you think about it, to your point, it's the heart of everything. Once that's replaced, it's essentially a new car. Like, granted, you have probably the legacy computer systems and other things in there, but as soon as you've got a brand new battery, you could potentially get more range, just better performance. Like, as soon as that is replaced, it's essentially a new car. So we brought up the $16,000 number that somebody was quoted recently, and that's obviously a pretty big upfront cost. But if you're like, I could have a brand new Tesla Model 3 for $16,000, that kind of helps put things in perspective too. If you're like, it's not like brand new, but I've got a new battery, more range, like everything's healthy, that then I believe we'd probably need to check on this actually. What does a replacement battery warranty look like? Does that have another 8 years, 120,000 miles, or is it less because it's in a used vehicle? Like, what does that look like from Tesla? I'd be curious to see what's covered with that.
Yeah, I'm curious from Tesla. I know that when GM replaced all the Bolt battery packs, they gave everybody a brand new warranty.
Okay, so it was just brand new, start over, basically.
Yeah. So, the people who had tons of miles, thousands of miles on their car, essentially got a brand new battery, they did, and then a brand new warranty. So it's like, that's incredible. It essentially like doubled their warranty,
right.
Depending, obviously, I'm just speaking out of tongue, but like, but no, like they got a brand new warranty. But yeah, I am curious about Tesla and how other companies might handle that.
Right.
I would hope that it would reset the warranty and they're just not, restart or just adding it onto the existing warranty.
Yeah.
Because that would I can imagine you have like 5 miles left on your warranty, get a new battery pack, and then 5 miles later your new battery isn't covered by anything.
yeah, that wouldn't be great. I'll have to text somebody. So another story, another person in our local Tesla group actually had their battery replaced under warranty. Mm-hmm. Model 3, I believe, is a 2021 or 2020, but they had their battery replaced under warranty. They actually, just for some insight, generally when Tesla does battery replacements, they give you a refurbished battery. It's not a brand new battery from the factory. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so generally it's a refurbished battery, which means sometimes it could have some degradation already. So again, it's like as long as they keep you in that 70% like range, it's kind of like within spec, if you will. So they could give you a new battery that doesn't have any error codes running, but it might have a little bit less capacity. So again, just understanding the verbiage there and the fine print of battery warranties is important. But I'll have to text him and see what the warranty is now. Is it just a continuation of that existing warranty? Since it is a refurbished battery, they may say, hey, this is brand new, but it's just kind of continuing out your warranty. So
yeah,
be curious.
Well, reach out to them and we'll follow up with the next episode.
Yeah,
at the beginning.
Yeah, we'll do.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, I think it's safe to say that, like, as I mentioned earlier in the episode, like I just feel like I'm oblivious to it because I just have trust that these battery packs are going to work and that the cars are smart enough to. I feel like we joke about this all the time that I'm like the Ben Affleck, smoking meme of this like EV industry. I feel like I should like have learned my lesson by now.
Yeah.
but I feel like based on all the experience and like all the data driven proof, I just feel like there's not a lot to worry about. I think they're expensive, Sorry, I just realized my do not disturb just turned off. No, I just it's it's something to be mindful of. I think that's the whole thing, is that like if you're out of warranty, it's probably going to be expensive to replace something.
Yep.
That's essentially how it is for most things that you're out of warranty.
Right. Right.
You either get it maintained or you replace it. So
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So, is there anything else in this other article we missed, or anything else you wanted to cover, or?
No,
So
yeah, I think that was about it. Definitely check out Recurrent Auto. We'll provide some links in the show notes. If anybody from Recurrent Auto is listening to this, thank you for writing this, and if you would like to sponsor us, that would be amazing. Because Tyler and I are massive
in this
fans.
episode. So
Yeah, right. A lot of product placement, but I feel like I'm okay to talk about that since they've sponsored some of our YouTube videos. They're a great company. But if you're data driven, looking to make a good purchase based on data, check them out. They're free to sign up for, get your vehicle added so they can utilize that data to make things better.
right.
I think that's really it. And one other thing I do want to note, if you are an EV driver and you've noticed some battery loss or degradation, or if you've run into like any issues with like battery replacements, warranties, let us know. We could definitely touch on that, and that would be good information for us to know as well.
Definitely.
Just because I'm going to, knock on wood quietly so it doesn't pick up on the recording. But fortunately, we haven't had to deal with that yet.
Yeah, the one thing I'll wrap up with before we sign off here is what happens with your battery if it does need to like go end of life, if you will. So like you do get a battery replacement, where does that battery go? And in most cases we're seeing is those batteries will go to get refurbished, like I said. So like if you're getting a battery replacement, something failed on your battery, that then goes to Tesla, gets refurbished, and then they put it in a new car. Or not a new car, but use it as a battery replacement. So that's one option. And then if it is truly like it's lost a ton of capacity, there's nothing really saving it, then a lot of times it will go to grid storage. So we've seen just across the utility and just energy industry as a whole, we need a lot more grid storage for all of the renewables that we're starting to get online. So we could do a whole podcast on this, but with solar energy, with wind energy, the sun isn't always shining, the wind isn't always blowing. So just capturing as much of that energy as possible is really important. And that's where EV batteries can really have a big impact in their second life, where they don't need to be hyper efficient because they're sitting on a concrete pad. They're not driving a piece of metal down the road. So they don't need to be super energy dense or anything like that. They can get along with just being charged up and discharged with the grid. So that is where a majority of them are going. So they're not being thrown in a landfill. They're not going into your water supply. Like they are trying to get second use out of them. They're still very expensive pieces of equipment and have useful life. So there's no reason to just dispose of them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and on that note, I do want to mention a project example that I think Nissan did a few years ago, where they were taking old Nissan Leaf battery packs and tying them into solar-powered LED street lamps for areas that don't have electricity. I believe it was in Africa. Gotcha. Which was such a cool project. So I mean, honestly, like these battery packs will have a second life, and it will be beneficial for essentially everybody who experiences that. So
right.
Yeah.
So,
well, things are good.
Everything's great.
Just try not to be Ben Affleck smoking.
All right, I think that'll do it for this one. So appreciate everybody tuning in, and we'll talk at you next week.